Hi, everyone. I hope that you can all hear me. Welcome to the Chinese University of Hong Kong. My name is Christopher Young, and I am the Chinese Studies Program Coordinator at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And I am here today with.
大家好, I'm Anne. I am currently an MPhil student, which is a research master in the Center for China Studies. And before starting on this research master, I was actually a bachelor's student also in the center.
So, thank you all again for coming and joining us today. Real exciting to have you all here. And we are here really to answer your questions. To give you guys a little bit of background, the Chinese University of Hong Kong is currently in its 50th anniversary year. We are 50 years old. We were founded in 1963 as Hong Kong's second university. And at the time of its founding, we were pretty small. Three liberal arts colleges in Hong Kong, Chengchi College, United College, and New Asia College, decided to combine together and form a university that would make it its mission to take the best of Eastern and Western tradition and 结合起来, find a way to bring them together and really build on the traditions of both, to provide a stronger, more comprehensive, higher quality educational experience for students from Hong Kong, Greater China, and all over the world. Now, fast forward to today, we're a university of over 12,000 undergraduate students, representing over 60 undergraduate majors across 8 different faculties, ranging from law to medicine to engineering to the arts to the social sciences to the hard sciences and many more. Anne Morel and I both represent the Center for China Studies, which is a very special unit on campus devoted to providing students with an education seeped in China, with the goal of preparing students for international careers involving China. And so we'd be more than happy to talk about our experience in the center, in China Studies, or just with the university more generally. Emerald, is there anything you want to add before we get going?
Um,
No, okay, that's totally great. So, the way we think this can work, if you guys have questions, please feel free to write in. I can see them right here on the screen, and Emerald and I will get to answering them. But until we get some questions, I'm just going to kind of do a sort of talk show style thing, talking to Emerald here, asking her about her experience here at CUHK and in Hong Kong, and perhaps some of her questions, or answers to her questions rather, um, will be illuminating for some of you out there. So, Emerald, tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from?
so I'm originally from the Netherlands, and I went to China first in 2007 to really experience China because I didn't really quite know what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go to college. I didn't even know what I really wanted to study in college. So I decided to go to China and actually went to Beijing to sort of learn the language and have some fun, travel around. And I did that. I fell in love with the country, although there have been days that I absolutely hated it. But I just got intrigued by it and I wanted to learn more about it. And so I started to look for programs that were specifically looking for international students to teach them about China because I was afraid that if I were to go to a school in the mainland China, where they would be teaching about Chinese culture and Chinese studies, that because I'm not from a Chinese culture, I would lose out. Um, and so I looked for programs, and I found this program in Hong Kong. And when my parents first heard about my idea of wanting to continue to study, they asked me, "Oh, why don't you stay in the mainland?" And especially my mom just kept telling me, "Just stay in the mainland; it will be so much better for your Mandarin."
Mm-hmm.
And I considered it for a long time, but I think the academic integrity in the mainland still lags behind Hong Kong. And being in Hong Kong, it is really close to the mainland. From where we are in Chinese studies, it's literally 25 minutes away by train. You just take
Yeah,
your
that's very
passport.
true. I have a flat on campus, and sometimes in the weekends, or on the weekends rather, I'll just hop up there for maybe a haircut, dinner, KTV of course. Always a necessity down in Shenzhen.
Cheap shopping.
Mm-hmm. So a couple follow up questions really quick. So you had said that you felt like Hong Kong had a little bit more academic integrity. And I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit more. What do you feel like you get out of Hong Kong specifically?
Um, a lot of people ask me this question, and uh, what I think is the most beneficial part of being in Hong Kong, being at CUHK, um, is, I mean, the name says it all, the Chinese University of Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
All the resources here are aiming at China
Mm-hmm.
in one way or another. And so at this university, not only in my department or not only in the center, but all over campus, most people are actually working and doing research on China.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have way more people around that are knowledgeable about China than you would have if you were, for example, in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you compare it with the mainland, what you quite often see in the mainland is that the teachers are still mainland Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do have foreign teachers, they might just be visiting scholars that stay for half a year
Mm-hmm.
or a year. And so it's quite difficult to build a relationship with them. But being in CUHK, where I have teachers that come from the US, that come from mainland China, and that come from Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
you hear different perspectives about China and about similar events.
Mm-hmm.
And so you learn to see China from a much more nuanced perspective.
Mm-hmm.
To give you an example, my first year when I came here, we had a very heated debate in which an American student asked the professor a question about Tiananmen, because he kept referring to Tiananmen 1989 as an incident. And so he said, why do you call it an incident? It was really a massacre. And so because he had been in actually the protests, he was able to talk about it. And because he was a professor in Hong Kong, he
Mm-hmm.
could really talk about it. And I think if he was in the mainland, that he would not have been able to do so.
Certainly. Emerald has to go get a door real quick, but I see that we have a question here. What scores do I need to get admitted into the university? So that is a great question. So I'll just go into talking real quick while Emerald goes and takes care of what she needs to take care of. I'll go into admissions for just a moment. So the way admissions works is you go online and you fill out an application, and we don't just ask about test scores. We certainly look at test scores because they're a great way to look at different applicants from different areas of the world, from different educational backgrounds, and compare them, get a pretty good idea for how they stack up against each other. But that's only part of the picture, right? I mean, all of you out there that are applying right now, there's much more to you than just test scores, and much more to you than, just one or two sittings for some sort of standardized exam. So we take that into consideration, of course, but we also look at your high school performance, your transcript. What classes have you taken? How have you done in those classes? What if your teachers thought about you? We ask for at least one teacher recommendation. What do you think about yourself? Where do you see your education going? And what do you want to get out of it? We ask for a personal statement where you have a chance to talk about that. We look at your extracurricular activities. What have you been involved in? What have you cared about outside of the classroom? And then we also, very often, many programs will choose to conduct interviews to give a student a chance to respond to some of the lingering questions that an evaluator might have. Because at the end of the day, a piece of paper can't represent you, and we know that. And so we try to make as many opportunities as possible in the process to allow you to express yourself, and so we don't have minimum requirements. We look at our applications holistically. We look at the whole person to try to figure out if they're a good fit for our university and the specific programs that person is looking at. Is there anything you wanted to say, kind of follow up on that?
Yeah, to jump in, when I got admitted in 2008, 2009 at CUHK, my grades perhaps weren't perfect on paper. Coming from a Dutch system where no one gets top score, so we work with a system that ranges from with grades from 1 to 10. 10 is just impossible. 9 is nearly impossible. If you get an 8, you've done a really good job. And so when I came in, especially as being admitted especially for the people that admit students, they might not really notice, but there is a lot of other things that you can do, and definitely my 1 year in China helped with that. But also my personal statement, the reasons why I was invested in China, I wanted to learn more about China, told a much better story really than my transcript did.
And that applies to all programs, not just China studies, right? So if you're applying to engineering, for example, talk in your personal statement about your passion for engineering. And this applies to all schools that you're looking at. If you're passionate about psychology, talk about that. If you're passionate about law, talk about that. You know, show the school or the specific program at the school why you're invested in them. Why do you want to join their ranks? Why do you want to join their community? And then also, what will you bring to the community? What will you add to the community? Um, and so, actually, that's a great segue into talking about the CUHK community more generally. So, Emerald, you were an undergrad here at CUHK.
Mm-hmm.
You graduated and you decided to stay, actually. You are now an MPhil student doing a 2-year research degree.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're in your 6th year here at CUHK, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Wow, that is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk about kind of your experience, coming from the Netherlands and then mainland China, kind of integrating yourself into CUHK and into Hong Kong? Talk about that journey, could you?
Yeah, so I thought, and I might have been a little bit naive, after I'd been to mainland China, that I knew how to deal with Chinese. But coming to Hong Kong, I came to realize that Hong Kong has a very different culture, and the people here are very different. But as long as you try very hard and you try to, speak the local language, and I've started to pick up Cantonese, and although I'm not fluent, I have been able to follow classes that are taught in Cantonese.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been difficult at times. I mean, it's not easy, and it's not fair to tell you that it's going to be easy. But if you try, and I mean, especially being in Chinese studies, what better way is there to really learn about China from your peers and your classmates? And I've been lucky that for the 3 years that I was in undergrad, I had local roommates, and so I was directly involved in their lives and what happened in our lives, and we shared a lot of ideas, and we had a lot of culture shocks. And those are the things that you don't learn in class and that you cannot learn in a book, because you learn all the big culture shocks, so the big differences, but the small differences, like how you wash how you wash a plate, which might seem like extremely irrelevant.
Right. But it can have a lot of cultural significance.
Yes. And so if you do that wrong, then the first time people just look at you like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, this is how we wash a plate. How can that be different from country to country?" But it has. If you were to do this wrong, if you, for example, invited your boss over, who is a Hong Kong person, and you do something wrong, that's very small to you, but it might become very big because there's so many misunderstandings. And these things you just never learn if you were in the U.S. or Europe.
Right, and actually, kind of building on that, these sorts of misunderstandings, when you think about creating an international career for yourself, which, I mean, let's be honest, the world is going global, careers are going global, and, students, when they enter their careers, they need to be able to operate globally in order to get really those great jobs that are opening up all over the world. Maybe even in your home country, but even if you're in your home country, it might require you to do business with a foreign entity or travel overseas to conduct business every now and then. And so it's really important to be able to not only be linguistically fluent, but to be culturally fluent as well. And that's where being on the ground can be very important and have a very substantial impact on your understanding of these different places. Especially in a place like China, where opportunities are just opening up every day, and if you have the tools to take advantage of them, your horizon is endless. Just the opportunities that can open up to you really are incredible. I see we have another question. I'd like to thank Sadman from Bangladesh for his previous question about admitted scores. And now I have Isabel. She has a question. I am interested in international development and learning. Oh, excellent. So, international development, I'm assuming, is talking about perhaps global economics and how countries develop globally. If you're interested in programs involving international development, international business, international economics, there are a few things that you could do to get those opportunities here on campus. The Center for China Studies, which Emerald and I both are affiliated with, offers a BA, BSSC in Contemporary China Studies. So those are two degrees actually: a BA, Bachelor of Arts, and a BSSC, a Bachelor of Social Science. And the Bachelor of Social Science offers two concentrations to students. One concentration is in development, the other concentration is in political economy. So for students interested in learning, how exactly has China developed? How has it become what it is today? And where is it going in the future? And how is that changing not only the domestic economy in China, but the global economy? And how can I take advantage of those opportunities? This is a great program for you. In addition to the BSSC and Contemporary China Studies, you could also look at the Faculty of Business, which offers 8 different programs aimed at preparing students for careers in international business. And then, thirdly, you could look at the Faculty of Social Science, which offers 2 programs, one in economics and one in global finance, that could be a great fit for you as well. In terms of learning, if you're interested in learning, you could look at psychology, which actually has a number of subfields concerned with how humans develop and how humans learn. And so psychology could be a great fit for you, or you could also look at our Faculty of Education if you're more interested in learning the pedagogy of how to teach and how just generally students learn in a classroom setting. Emerald, is there anything you wanted to add on?
No, I think you've covered everything that needs to be covered.
I try to do what I can. So, Isabel, I hope that helped answer your question. If you have other follow-up questions, please feel free to write those in. We'd be more than happy to talk about them. So, I also wanted to go back to something you said earlier, Emerald, just to divert the conversation back to your experiences for a moment, which I think will help our listeners around the world get a better sense for what it's like to study on our campus here in Hong Kong. You said that when you first moved to China, and you were of course talking about mainland China, you at times found yourself very frustrated with it. And I was wondering, I come from the United States, full disclosure. And when I first moved to China, I didn't live in Hong Kong. I lived in mainland China as well. And I had, a similar experience. Culture shock, at times encountering things I didn't really understand, how things work. It was a bit confusing. It was a bit jarring. And I think that for a lot of students, that can be a difficult experience. And so I was wondering if you could talk about those difficulties and how you kind of overcame them and learned from them.
So one experience that I still remember very vividly, because I actually screamed at some Chinese in Chinese saying, "I hate this country." I'm embarrassed to say this now, but I was traveling with a friend. We went to, where did we go? Wudai-shan. We were climbing Wudai-shan, which is one of the mountains in China. And as most Chinese did, they climb it at night so that they can see the sunset in the morning. And so we went to bed at maybe 6 p.m. and we got up at 11:30 to see that it was raining. But we decided, we're going to do this. We want to experience it the Chinese way. This is what Chinese tourists do, so this is what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So fine, we climbed it. Couldn't see anything in the morning because, of course, the sun was covered behind clouds. And so we just went down and we were very disappointed. And I got even more disappointed as we had a couple hours of sleep because I got really sick. And so I said to my friend, we're just going to have another night of sleep and I'm going to see how I feel in the morning. And I just felt so sick. So I woke up at 3 in the morning, 3 a.m. and I said, I want to go back to Beijing because I just don't feel well and I want to be in a big city in case, if I get really, really sick. And so C called me into a cab and we got to a bus station at 5 a.m. in the morning. And C went to the counter to get tickets and C asked for, can I have tickets for the bus to Beijing? They gave us tickets for 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And we were extremely frustrated because it was 5 a.m. in the morning. I was sick. I had fever. It was just not I wasn't in a very good place. And so we decided, because we had to wait 7 hours to go to the closest McDonald's. And so I actually slept in McDonald's, another embarrassing story, but it's one of those things.
It happens to the best of us when we're traveling around Asia.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you can do in China as a foreigner. You get away with certain stuff and
right.
not part of it. But we go back to the bus station to make a long story short, and we realized that there actually had been numerous buses going to Beijing in between the time that we had bought the tickets and the time of our ticket, and none of these buses were full. And so I just got extremely frustrated because I just wanted to go home and I was sick and I just wanted my bed. And we asked them, but why didn't you just give us tickets for the first bus? And they're like, well, you didn't ask for it. You asked for a bus to Beijing, so that's what you got. And at this point, I just screamed at them saying, I hate China, and I hate the Chinese. And in retrospect, I mean, they did what we asked. But now I know that whenever I travel, I need to ask for the earliest bus or the earliest train as it's leaving. And otherwise, they'll just give you something. Because, they'll try and figure out what you would prefer.
Yeah, I think that, when you move to a new country, whether it's China or anywhere else, there are certain expectations that you'll probably carry with you from your own country, your own background about how things are supposed to work. And, I think even today, after living in China, both of us have lived in China now for several years. And I don't know about you, but at times I still struggle with that. I think to myself, these are my expectations, for how X, Y, or Z is supposed to work or function. And, when it goes awry, it can be jarring. And sometimes I have to remember to kind of take a step back and say, well, just because this is how it works in the U.S. doesn't mean that's how, for example, it should necessarily work. Maybe the U.S. is doing it wrong. Or maybe there are just other ways of doing it, and other expectations that people have. Like, for example, that you'll specify your time, and if not, you just get what you get. Or, X, Y, or Z, it could be anything. No. So, going back to Hong Kong for a moment, so you talked about, living in mainland China. You talked about, why you chose to come to Hong Kong for your undergraduate. I was wondering if you could talk about, kind of campus life. Like, what did you find when you came to Hong Kong? So, you were an undergraduate student here on campus for several years. You lived in one of our residential colleges. And actually, if you wanted to talk about the residential college experience on campus, we're actually in a residential college right now. I think that would be great for our listeners.
Yeah, so I was actually really excited when I first heard that CHK had a campus, because coming from Holland, where universities are generally smaller and we don't have university campuses, and if we do, we have one actually, but people don't really live on the campus. So I was really excited, and I had seen all these American TV shows, and I thought, oh, it's going to be like that. Well, it was nothing like that, which I think was a good thing, because, why would you have an American campus if you are in Hong Kong? So it's different from what you might expect if you were in your own country, or if you were to go to the US or somewhere else. College life is different here, but it's not less exciting. There's certain things here in the hostels, like people are still awake at 3 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. in the morning, and they do these very funny dembi, which they use to advertise for their programs, and they say, like, they shout some things in Cantonese, sometimes English, but they press your fees in the middle of the night, which is sometimes very frustrating when you try and get you sleep, but at the same time you learn something about life here, and I'll be honest, I didn't really see it that way when I first came here. But,
right. Students are very intense about their extracurricular activities. They care a lot about their out-of-classroom commitments. And I think the thing is, they really care about building a campus community that is strong. And you do see that play out. I think that, in the residential colleges, students stay up late at night, not necessarily to do work. In fact, more often than not to do work, to practice these activities for their different clubs and societies, or to just, like, make a midnight snap and hang out with a friend. So Anne-Morel was talking about campus. So we actually have the largest campus in Hong Kong. We are a campus of 137 hectares in the New Territories. We actually take up an entire mountain. And this mountain is just chock full of life. And really the center of life, and the center in particular of undergraduate life, is the residential college system. So the residential college system, you could think of it kind of as the house system from Harry Potter, right? So you've got Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff, and they all take up different parts of the Hogwarts castle, and they all have, their different masters. They all have their different traditions and kind of their different cultures. And we kind of have the same system, minus magic and a sorting hat, although that would be really awesome.
I would sign up for that.
I know, right? So we have 9 residential colleges on campus, and what makes the residential college system so cool is that they're campuses within our bigger campus. So each residential college actually has its own campus on campus and its own campus community. It is not just dormitories. All residential colleges, in addition to dormitories, in addition to hostels, also include their own cafeterias, restaurants, and cafes. They include their own libraries and study rooms. They include their own gyms and other recreational facilities, and their own staff dedicated to making sure that students get the holistic support they need to make the most of their undergraduate experience and really learn and prosper during their undergraduate experience. Now, our residential colleges are not sorted by nationality, not sorted by language, not sorted by major. Students from all nationalities, who speak all languages, who are studying all majors, are in all colleges. They're really, the colleges really are microcosms of the greater university and the diversity of the greater university. You have students from all over the university here and there learning from each other. You have someone studying medicine rooming with someone who's studying law. And those two fields, even though they might seem to be far apart, really kind of inform each other. And so it's really important that at our campus, students get that sort of cross-cultural, cross field, cross-discipline exposure. And I see Isabel has another question. How much does it cost to stay in a residential college? So the residential college fee is, I believe this past year, if I remember correctly, it was about 10,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is just about $1,200 US dollars, 1,200 US dollars. It's pretty cheap. In fact, I would go farther. I would say it's very cheap. It's very affordable. Our hostel spaces are very kindly subsidized by the Hong Kong government. And part of the reason for that is Hong Kong is a global city. It's ranked behind New York and London as the third most globally connected city. A lot of people want to live here. A lot of people want to work here. And, Hong Kong, at the end of the day, is a series of islands and a peninsula. So space can be kind of limited. And housing can be kind of pricey because of that. But we don't want the pricing of residential housing to adversely affect dorm spaces and the cost of dorm spaces. We want to make sure that students from Hong Kong and anywhere else in the world can afford to live on campus and have the on-campus experience. So it is heavily subsidized.
And there are scholarships available if your parents or
absolutely.
If you are in need. Then actually each residential college has funding available.
Yes.
For students.
That is absolutely true, and I did want to talk about that briefly as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you apply to our university, if you are admitted, you are automatically considered for merit-based scholarships. You do not need to fill out any other application. And not only does the government have scholarships available, the university has scholarships available, the residential colleges have scholarships available, the programs have scholarships available, and these might range from like 5,000 to 10,000 Hong Kong dollars to full tuition for all 4 years. So we work really hard to make sure that students can access the resources they need to take advantage of our university community and join our university community. I think Emerald will agree with me on this. Education should never be limited by income. I personally believe education is a universal right. And that doesn't just include primary and secondary education. I believe higher education for students who excel and are worthy of contributing to our university should be able to attend regardless of how much their parents make, for example.
Yeah, and in case if you're wondering if you as an international student would be eligible to apply for these scholarships. I actually just attended a scholarship um, ceremony where students from, if I remember correctly, 8 different nationalities got merit-based scholarships into the residential college where I'm living right now. And if I remember correctly, one was from Sweden, one was from Malaysia. Then there's of course the Hong Kong local students, the mainland students. We have one student from India, and so it's a very wide range of students that we see and that do get scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
So
Actually, one great example that I just learned about yesterday, come to think of it, I was speaking with a colleague in the Office of Admissions and Financial Aid here at the university, and she was telling me, oh, we had a donor last year fund this new scholarship for German students. And I was like, really? Wait, tell me more about that. And so this donor has funded a full scholarship, full tuition for all 4 years at our university, with priority going to a German student. That was a scholarship that was started last year. And that's a scholarship that now is going to be available to students coming from Germany. But that's just one example of one scholarship. We have dozens and dozens of scholarships. Some are limited to students from a specific nationality, like Germany, mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, the US, England, Australia. Some are limited to major, like for students who are interested in engineering, students who are interested in law, students who are interested in China study. And some are open-ended. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what you want to study. You're a great student. We want you. And so there's a whole diverse range of opportunities to get scholarships available. A lot of money available for students. And all you have to do to have that chance is apply. So, MRL, this is now your 6th year here in Hong Kong. Oh, actually, wait. Isabel asked another question. Let's see. Is there a minimum GPA to apply for these scholarships? No, actually. So, if you are admitted to the university, you are automatically considered for scholarships. There is no additional application to be considered. And if you're admitted to the university, presumably your GPA and your SAT score are sufficient to get you into the university, certainly. So that should make you eligible at the basic level for scholarships. And that's when other information really comes into play. For example, personal statement, teacher recommendations, your extracurricular involvement, all of those other things become factors in the consideration as well. So, if you're a hardworking student who has been able to develop a record of achievement during your secondary school education, I guarantee you will be a strong candidate.
And even if you don't get a scholarship when you get in, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get a scholarship for your entire academic life. I didn't get a scholarship when I got in, but I've gotten scholarships for my 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year for my college, which one of them actually covered my entire tuition fee. For
wow.
that year. So
that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. So don't despair if your GPA is not good enough when you come in, or we don't really talk about not good enough, but if you don't get it, merit-based scholarship when you come in.
And that's actually a great point. If you come into the university and you don't have a scholarship initially, if you work hard, there are rewards to working hard. You can get a scholarship for your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year, get scholarships to study abroad, get scholarships for summer study, or summer research, or summer internships. There are innumerable opportunities available on our campus for students who come in with initiative and drive and are willing to work hard and play hard, build relationships, and put themselves out there, take risks.
And it's not only merit-based, it's also if you show that you have done a lot of volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are plenty of scholarships available for those who do extracurricular activities that may not be considered mainstream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's certainly very true. That's certainly very true.
Mm-hmm.
So this is your 6th year in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
why did you decide actually to stay after graduation? What made you decide, 4 years here, it's not enough. You want more.
There are plenty of reasons. One was that I wanted to continue to study, and I looked at multiple programs, not only in Hong Kong but also overseas. And Hong Kong just gave me the best deal. Um, I could stay for 2 years, and doing research on China, I am right here. I did, for example, I did part of my research in Hong Kong, and I did part of my research in Guangzhou, which is about 2 hours by train from Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a great opportunity that you have. As a research master, you also get funding, which is also a big plus, especially in a world where since 2008 in at least certain European countries, academic funding is being cut back.
Mm-hmm.
In Hong Kong, it's definitely not.
Yeah, that's very true.
And the other reason, I just love Hong Kong. I just fell in love with this place, and I don't want to leave. And yeah, I'm now in my 6th year. Next year's gonna be my 7th year. I'm gonna apply for permanent residency in Hong
Oh,
Kong.
wow.
Because I see my future life here. So that's and there's definitely things that I don't like about Hong Kong, but any place has things that you don't like about it, and any place has frustrations. But overall, I think Hong Kong has a lot more to offer to me.
So you were just saying that you really fell in love with Hong Kong. Can you
Mhm.
talk about what it is about the city? I don't know if you can narrow it down necessarily to, A, B, or C, but if you could just talk a little bit about what you find mesmerizing about this place.
Something that Hong Kong has is both a big city, but at the same time it has so many different faces.
Mm-hmm.
From the campus, but if you were to live in the city, you're right in the busy life. You can buy anything you like. You can drink anything you like. You can buy food that is exported from the U.S. or from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very easy. But at the same time, I could take a bus, and within 20 minutes, I'm out in a place where there's no one else, where it's quiet, where there's nature,
Mm-hmm.
where you hear the birds, and there's not many cities where you have that.
That is very true. Hong Kong. So I was saying earlier, Hong Kong is a series of islands and a peninsula. And I think, a lot of people who haven't been here before, they don't really think about how that has affected how the city is developed.
Mm-hmm.
You have these very densely populated, very urban areas, very vibrant, very alive. And then literally, these areas are right next to pristine mountains that are totally undeveloped. And the line between nature and urban development, it's very stark. It's a street. It can be a sidewalk. It can be a fence. Or no fence at all. It could just be there.
Mm-hmm. Actually, last Saturday when I was going to play tennis with a friend, I almost stepped on a snake as I was walking down the staircase on campus. And I know people that have encountered monkeys on campus.
Actually, I saw a monkey here a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. He was digging through the trash. I think he got some sort of Coke bottle out. I think it was a Coke bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was going to be a caffeinated monkey later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is one of the neat things about Hong Kong. This mixture of, urban and nature.
Mm-hmm.
This mixture of human and monkey, so to speak. There's no place like it.
No.
There really isn't.
And of course we're biased, but I think
right.
Having lived in multiple cities in mainland China, having traveled quite a bit in Europe, yeah, I think it's fair to say that there's really no other place than Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a big city; it's so much more.
It's much more alive than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think, people always say Hong Kong is just a city. So when my friends or family come and they ask me, what are we going to do in Hong Kong? I'm like, I honestly don't know. I mean, maybe I can plan for 3 days, and then as it comes near that they come here, I have this whole list, and I'm like, okay, you should have planned to stay here for a month because I have so much to do. Even a month would cover it. So,
yeah.
There's a lot more than that. Yeah, and to follow up on something I said before, why would you come to Hong Kong to study Chinese studies? Actually, there is certain things or certain aspects of China or Chinese culture that you can really only study either in Hong Kong or Taiwan because so many things have disappeared in China. And of course, this is reviving currently, but there's still so many more things and so many more traditions that you don't really see in the mainland anymore, but that you do see in Hong Kong.
That is very true. That's very true. Having lived first in mainland China and then moved here, I see that it's very obvious the difference between these two places and how the different histories of these places have kind of played out and are kind of uh, lived out today, you could even say.
Yeah.
I think we have asks another question. How does the school rank on an international level? So actually, the QS World University rankings um, this year ranked us 39th in the world. So that is one ranking. There are many other rankings in the world, and we're ranked, usually from the high 30s to the 50s. So on the global scale, we do pretty well. We offer a very strong academic program. We have a very strong academic reputation, and our graduates do well on the market. And I think that is really, where you look at our quality, right? Like, are our applicants getting jobs? What kind of jobs are they getting? And are they being successful in their careers? Are we doing a good job preparing them for their careers? And I think across the board, it is yes.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of your friends doing now, actually, from undergrad?
So they're actually in a wide range of jobs. Some of them are teaching, some of them are in business, trading, banking. Some are continuing studying, like me, want to continue in academia or do some more research-related jobs. One of my friends is working at NGO. So it's actually a really wide range of things that you can do, and it all depends on what you want to do and how you see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you choose, and that's one of the great things I found about China studies is that you sort of choose your own courses, and so you choose what you see fit for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, looking around in campus and having been there for 6 years, or 5 years, it does, I think, prepare students in a much better way because you get to do what you like to do, and I think that works just way better than if you have to take these courses because they're required by your department, but you don't really care about these courses. And of course, that happens to all of us. I've taken courses that I had to take, but I did less well in those courses than in my other courses because I just didn't care about them.
That's very true.
So it really depends on what you want to do and where you see yourself, and of course that changes. When I first came in, I thought I was going to go into business and I was going to maybe bridge between the West and the East. But having taken a couple of business courses, I very quickly realized that is not where I want to go, and I'm just way more passionate about anthropology in China, cultural problems, social problems.
Right. And I think, for students out there who are unsure of what they want to do or just have more time to figure it out, a program like China Studies can actually be a great fit. We offer these two different degrees. We offer a BA or a BSSC, a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Social Science, depending on students' preference. And these two degrees have 4 concentrations between them. The BA offers a humanities concentration or a language and culture concentration, and then the BSSC offers development and political economy. And so students have some real choice. And within those concentrations, a range of courses that they can choose to learn different skills and strategies that will help them in their future careers.
Yeah, and actually I think when you go into the workforce, even though you might be in a very specific sector, you will always have to do things that you might not have been prepared for. If you had gone into a program that was just very clear cut, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to learn.
Right, and I think that a lot of students out there, they want more freedom. They want to be able to shop for their courses and find courses that are a good fit for them.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I'll say, just going back to the jobs that you were just listing off, and you and I were actually talking about this earlier. Oftentimes students want to know, okay, so I go into your program, then what? What jobs will I get afterwards? And in response, I usually ask the questions, well, what jobs do you want to get? What are you interested in? I'm not the person who's living your career. You are. And I think that's really important for students to know that, coming into our program does not box them in. And we, the staff, do not see it as boxing them in. We actually help them to think outside the box, think about what they want to do, and help them get there through not only the courses on our campus, but helping to put them in internships during the summer as well as during term time that help get them out of class experience that they can really take and run with it to get the best jobs in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No.
And we're all very different students. One of my classmates, he has done a lot of internships at very big companies, and he's done like a lot of things that I never did. And another student, he's doing a lot of different conferences, and he's traveling all over the world. And so, it really depends on what kind of opportunities you grasp and what you want to get out of it, and how actively you work for it, because in the end, you will have to work as well. It's not going to be something that's going to be handed to you on a golden spoon and say, here you have it all. And that doesn't work in any program. So you have to be active, and you have to work for it yourself.
That's very true.
We have all the resources, but yeah, you'll have to gather all the resources that you want to use.
Right. No one's going to hold your hand. Nor should we. Now, that doesn't mean we don't offer support, mind you. Like, your academic programs will be a great resource. Your residential colleges will be a great resource. Your fellow students will be a great resource. There are all of these pieces on campus that are designed to help you. But we're not going to do it for you. We're going to teach you how to do it. And then you'll be able to take that and run with it. And that's going to help you so much more in the future than if we held your hand and just did it for you.
And it's so much more fun.
Right. And you learn so much more, and it's much more rewarding when you do it. And you're like, wow, I accomplished that. I see Isabel had one last question. Are there exchange programs? Yes, yes, yes. Our university actually has over 240 exchange partners around the world, across Australia, Greater Asia, Eastern and Western Europe, Africa, Central and South America, North America. You name it, we have an exchange program there. And actually, Anne Morel, I remember you went on exchange when you were an undergrad here. You went to New Zealand, I believe, right?
Yes, I did. I went to New Zealand in my third year, and now you might ask, you're in the Center for China Studies, why New Zealand? But having lived in Europe, having spent some time in Asia, I wanted to know how New Zealand and how Asia Pacific more specifically looked at China. And everyone goes to Australia, and I've not often followed the mainstream, and so I decided I wasn't going to go mainstream on this one either. And so I went to New Zealand, and it was great to spend time there and see how the overseas Chinese community lived there, how New Zealand in general is looking towards China. Especially since New Zealand has so many resources, natural resources, and China is lacking some of these. So to see how these two countries interact was very interesting for me. Also in terms of human rights, because human rights always come up when you talk about China. And in Holland or in the Netherlands, we believe that if you deal with China, you'll have to mention these things, you have to bring these things up. But that doesn't always yield the best results, because the Chinese get very offensive, they get very defensive. And so what New Zealand tried to do is to bring up these issues, but in a different way. So instead of saying you should do this, they would say, oh, maybe you could do this, or maybe you could do that, or have you thought about this? And so they just brought it in a different way, which I think fits the Chinese way of doing things better. And that doesn't mean that you give up your values and that you don't stand up for your own ideas and your own ideals that your country has and that the people have, but you try and fit it into a Chinese context.
This is something I've thought of a lot as well. Watching the U.S.-China relationship develop, it's made me think about, how the U.S. goes about kind of getting its way in the world and making itself known. And I'm not going to go into that here, or my thoughts on it, especially, in recent weeks, as certain revelations have come about, spying on German chancellors and whatnot. Love my country. But I have thought a lot about, how the U.S. has approached China in the past, and how in many ways, it's been quite counterproductive. Um, you can bring up issues like human rights, for example, but you really have to think about, and this is where culture comes into it, what is the most appropriate way to bring it up with China that will yield results and that will actually start a productive conversation for both sides. And that's something that, again, you learn on the ground. Developing relationships with Chinese people, learning the Chinese language and its nuances, and how culture is ingrained in the language, and how cultural cues are ingrained in the language, and how culture and language operate together to create this kind of space where human rights are discussed, for example, and the specific ways in which human rights are discussed. So I would say, that really goes back to what you were saying earlier, the benefits of being here in China on the ground, learning about the way culture works, and then, going to these other places to learn from them. Okay, how do China New Zealand interactions work? How might that differ from Chinese interactions with my home country
Mm-hmm.
of Holland? It can really bring your understanding of China as well as China's relationship with the world to a whole new level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have a lot of exchange programs, and actually a lot of colleges, or actually most residential colleges, want their students to go on exchange,
Mm-hmm.
preferably for half a year or a year. But if that is not possible, a lot of different residential colleges also have summer programs to go to. For example, in my college when I lived here, United College, to go for 2 weeks to the Netherlands, or to go for 2 weeks to Australia to learn about climate change and to learn about how they deal with climate.
Mm-hmm.
They have other programs to the UK. There's programs to China. There's also volunteering trips, which range from a week to about a month. So again, it really depends on how you want to make use of the resources, because
Right.
everything is here.
That's definitely true. And it's all about accessing the resources and making those resources work for you. Building relationships with your professors, building relationships with the residential college staff, building relationships with your classmates, and using the resources of the university to get the best education that is possible for you. And so, with that, I think we will wrap up. Thank you all so much for coming and joining us today. We hope that we were able to answer some of your questions, give you a better idea of, what we're all about here at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and in particular in the Center for China Studies. My name is Chris Young.
My name is Emerald.
And thank you so much for joining us. 谢谢。
That's it.